Tonight. Misery for residents, but it's not the first time. We follow the trail of the tips that break the rules and the government agency criticised for not doing enough to stop them.
Yes, we were getting fly and seagull infestations as well, so it was absolutely sickening.
Its job is to create better places for people and wildlife, but tonight the Environment Agency is under fire for failing to curb the actions of a Tyneside waste contractor at the centre of a series of recent pollution incidents. It follows repeated escapes of rubbish at the Blaydon quarry landfill in Gateshead, as well as bad smells and traffic chaos making life miserable for local residents. At a heated public meeting at Gateshead Council yesterday, the role of the agency was called into question.
The community is angry, and they're not just angry about the operator, they're angry about the perceived lack of action from the Environment Agency to enable us to manage this operator effectively.
Well, tonight, Look North can reveal that the problems in Blaydon aren't the first time the tip operator has come to the attention of the authorities in a series of incidents which it's claimed have blighted the lives of local residents. Jerry Jackson has this exclusive report.
It's a scene of complete devastation. There's litter everywhere. It's on the road, it's in the hedges, it's in the trees, it's in the nature reserves, it's in people's gardens. It's absolutely appalling.
When rubbish was blown by strong winds across trees and into a nearby nature reserve, it was the final straw for local residents.
It's not just about the litter. With appalling smells, mud on roads, traffic queuing at the site, it's an ongoing problem and we need more powers to address it.
Well, the clean-up appears to have been partially successful. Meanwhile, it sounds like business as usual inside the tip. Scores of lorries laden with waste from across the north of England have been rumbling in and out.
Last year, Octagon Green Solutions broke its permitted tipping limits by a third, bringing in an extra 120,000 tonnes of waste. It has 2 recent enforcement notices from the Environment Agency, and a criminal investigation is underway into the latest escape of rubbish. The site is owned and run by a man called Kevin Wanless. So far he's failed to respond to our request for an interview, so we decided to have a dig about to see what we could find out about him. Here he is as a consultant for a highly controversial tip near Hull.
Our plan is to try and screen the landfill site for future purposes.
The landfill at Gilberdyke near Hull was plagued with problems. It was filled to twice its permitted height and led to angry protests.
Within a couple of weeks of these guys taking over, we had almost riots in the village. Huge amounts of smell and a huge number of lorries going through, and as the lorries came through they trailed mud through, and that was the initial problem. Smell, lorries and the mud.
Well, the authorities finally stepped in and tipping stopped in 2012. The memories, though, of the disruption caused here are still very raw.
Oh, horrendous. I mean, some people have suffered nervous breakdowns, and no exaggeration. There's people in the village with nervous breakdowns. There's people in the village that sold their houses.
Until taking over at Blaydon 2 years ago, Kevin Wanless was operations director for a firm called Nairamax in Hartlepool. Back in 2008, they opened a landfill on the outskirts of the town, tipping thousands of tonnes of waste just yards away from newly built homes.
It was absolutely horrendous. The children couldn't play out. They were coming in crying because it smelled so bad. The dust was covering all our houses. The noise from it was horrendous. We were getting fly and seagull infestations as well. So it was absolutely sickening.
Samantha and her neighbours in Hartlepool had to go to court to get the tip closed, but it's knocked thousands from the value of their homes.
We're left with a legacy of that our houses will never be the value they should be, hoping that going forward your children's health are going to be safe, because again you're relying on information from the council and the Environment Agency that the site is safe.
So were you surprised to hear Mr Wanless's name crop up in relation to a site at Blaydon?
I'm not surprised to hear that Mr Wanless is attached to it, yet another landfill. We've heard his name reverberate around landfills, and we can all sort of sympathise with the residents of Blaydon.
I knew that Kevin Wanless had moved up to Blaydon, and we weren't the first, and Blaydon won't be the last, unless the Environment Agency acts.
Jerry Jackson, BBC Look North.
Well, we invited the Environment Agency to comment on our findings. No one was available for interview, but they said they were continuing investigations into the recent litter escape at Blaydon, and they recognise the frustrations of the local community and are committed to enforcing the permit conditions at Blaydon. Mr Wanless, meanwhile, has also not responded to our latest invitation to explain his management of tips at Blaydon, Hull and Hartlepool. Well, joining me now is the MP for Blaydon, Dave Anderson. So, Dave Anderson, you want this thing closed, surely?
I want it closed so it's working properly. If this was a one-off, we could live with it, but this is a pattern of behaviour that's gone on for almost a decade, if not longer. But it's got worse. The recent incident with litter came just after one at Christmas, where a notice was served on the site, and they came what they called was a litter management plan. And then we get something in March, which is even twice as bad as what it was. The council's closed the roads for 2 weeks and been cleaning up, and they haven't got it finished. That's how desperately bad it is.
Right, so at the meeting last night, the Environment Agency was in the firing line, but does it have enough power to deal?
There's an issue about the lack of powers, and that is something that I'm trying to work with them. That there's a DEFRA consultation on now, and I've said trying to encourage local people and all politicians to give them more ammunition. There is an issue about resources. The Environment Agency, like all public sector bodies, has lost people, and they are stretched. But they do need more resources. But at the end of the day, if this company and the companies previous, because this isn't a one-off, if the companies previous did what they're supposed to do under regulations put in place by the council and by the Environment Agency, we wouldn't be having this discussion.
Because it's not local. It's not just local waste, is it? It's coming
it's almost all come from the world. But what really worried me was the report talked about 120,000 tonnes surplus last year. Now, I've had an ongoing debate with the Environment Agency about when is a surplus not a surplus, and they argue it's the volume of the waste rather than the amount of the waste. But it's just, you can't put a third more than what you're licensed to and not expect to have problems. So we don't
want to get too technical, Dave. A last word, what is it that you can do that the Environment Agency can't to get this sorted?
We can. What we should be doing is getting the Environment Agency to go to court, which they've said to me they are preparing to take Mr Wanless and the company under caution to interview them with the intent of going to court. But what we need is we do need stronger powers. But we also want Mr Wanless to accept the fact that he is doing a public service. This is not out of the goodness of his heart. Well, he's being paid good money by the people at Gates to do the job. He needs to do it properly.
We extend the offer to Mr Wanless to come and talk to us again to...
Well, it's time he come out of his bunker.
Have his say. Thank you very much indeed, Dave Anderson.